everybody, and welcome to the, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good. Thank you everybody for being here. Welcome. This is a Transportation Committee meeting of September 14th, 2016. I'm Councilman Mike Bonham, the chair. I am joined by my colleagues Paul Koretz of the 5th District and Nuri Martinez of the 6th District, and I believe Mr. Rue will be with us shortly. Let us start, as is my custom, with our multimodal roll call. In the past few weeks since this committee has last met, who has commuted by train? Okay. How about by bus? That includes Dash. Oh, bunch more hands shot up. Bicycle? Okay. Carpool? Okay, good. All right. Did I miss any mode of transportation? Pedestrian. Walking. How did I forget walking? I do this every week, and then I make everybody raise their hands. Anybody walk in the past 2 weeks? Seriously, none of the traffic officers have walked in the past 3 weeks? Okay, and these are the people you're going to honor, Salita. Okay. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Colleagues, we're also joined by Mr. Rue. I am going to recommend that we take items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on consent.
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Yep. Any objection? Okay, that's the direction of the committee. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional public comment cards in?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to close receipt of public comment cards, and I will do, Ms. Ramirez, you have a total of 5 cards, so I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Starting with number 1, is that okay?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the ongoing projects and programs, transit services, etc. More people would take the buses if they had, if the companies would at least put more buses on the road, such as 180, 181, and the 780 going in and out of Glendale and Pasadena area to downtown LA. The other ones are number 2 and number 4, going from Los Angeles downtown to UCLA Westwood Wilshire corridor, and number 79 and 78 going from downtown to Alhambra or Arcadia. These buses take forever, and it's a shame that we live in a wonderful high society civilized country, and we can't get buses that we have to sit and wait for at least an hour, sometimes longer if the buses break down. And that's just one. Then you've got the Dash A that goes from, let's say, from First and Hill to Little Tokyo, and back and forth in both directions. Well, I've got the 4 black women, Dash bus drivers, who would not let me get on the bus. Again, I take these on the Dash bus. They would not let me on the bus. They won't open the door, or they'll slam the door shut in my face and say, honey child, you can't get on the bus. I said, okay. So most of the times, the Latinos are the ones that let me on the Dash bus A. But I tell those black bus drivers on Dash A that from here on First and Hill to Little Tokyo, I say Rosa Parks, Rosa Parks, Rosa Parks. So now when I see the black Dash bus driver, I have to wait 30 to 40 minutes, sometimes an hour, and I will not even get on the bus, just not to avoid I'm avoiding confrontations or any kind of verbal, attacks. But yet, had I done it to them, I'd be civil. I'd be sued. So again, this is what I carry as a homeless person. I am not allowed on the buses by these black ladies. That is a racist crime shame, And I'm not here to pick a fight with nobody, but that is wrong. Outrageously wrong. Yes, I'm homeless, and I'm not the only one. But a black guy will get on with a whole load full of cans, a bag full of cans, empty cans. That is wrong, and I'm going to make sure that I expose that I'm angry. You know, I don't do that to no black person, but they do it to me. You know, and God dang, that's going to stop. Having said that, now again, getting back to the buses, more people would ride the buses. And you know what's even embarrassing? That I can go to Tijuana. I can take a taxi, in a minivan, or a bus, anywhere, and not wait more than 5 minutes. Even if the cars, the buses are old and dilapidated, you never have to wait more than 5 minutes to get on any bus. As old and junky that they are, you will get on a bus, on a minivan, or a taxi car, and they'll take you anywhere in and around Tijuana, even out to the beach areas. But here in America, we have to wait an hour for the buses. No wonder people don't want to ride the buses. Not to mention you got MRSA, bed bugs, scabies, feces, and urine and trash. I do not sit on the dash buses, and I never ever sit on the metros. I never do. I stand holding my shopping carts. Yes, there are some lovely bus drivers. And you know what? I always bless them when they let me on. They're sweet and they're kind. I said, this is what it is. I am homeless. I'm tired of going all the way to storage, 45 minutes and 45. It just isn't worth it. It's draining. It's stressful. And you know what? I don't care. I get on a bus if I have to wait an hour or two. Sometimes I can't get on the buses. I wait till 5 in the morning and take the first bus to wherever I have to go. And I'll sleep on that corner street. But that's what I go through every day. Having said that, and that's, again, number one. And number 6, item number 6, UCLA area, the Wilshire-Westwood corridor area is dangerous. You got Ralph's, Target, CVS, Rite Aid, and Trader Joe's that entertain or do nothing about the violence down there in the Wilshire-Westwood corridor area. It is dangerous. Weyburn and corner of Weyburn and Westwood, you've got a lot of homeless, mental illness, and they get physical. I've been attacked there by a black guy out there, and I filed a police report. And you know what? The West Los Angeles police is inept. It's inefficient. They're lazy asses, and they're racist. They don't care about anybody or anything. Again, they promised you that they're going to get on it. They never do, and they never follow up on police reports, even on assaults. So again, shut the West Los Angeles Police Department, because the West Los Angeles Police Department isn't helping anybody. They, along with the Rampart, are the worst police departments you have ever seen, and that's why you've got high crime rate. Thank you. God bless America and Donald Trump.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. I'm glad to hear you're avoiding verbal confrontation. We have 2 general public comment cards. I believe, Mr. Sutton, did you want to comment on the general manager's report or general public comment?
Either way, it's probably the same.
Okay, so we'll do general public comment if Mr. Sutton and Hillary Norton. Come on up.
My name is Christopher Sutton. I'm an attorney for the Westin Bonaventure Hotel, and I'm here to praise LADOT and their responses to MTA's applications for worksite traffic control plans, etc. But what we've learned in the litigation is that MTA regularly misleads, in fact lies to and deceives LADOT in order to obtain these approvals, and that we've provided these documents to LADOT, and really their hands are tied, because they are not invoking the power they have under CEQA, under Public Resources Code 21081.6 and CEQA regulations 15096 and 15097. LADOT and other city departments need to impose their own mitigation monitoring and reporting program on those other government agencies where the city is a responsible agency, which it is in this case. And the city's failure to impose its own MMRP on MTA reduces the power that LADOT has over MTA when MTA provides deceptive, incomplete, or in fact completely fraudulent information. So we would urge the council and the committee to address the issue of LADOT's responsibilities under 21081.6. Thank you.
Norton.
Good afternoon. My name is Hillary Norton. I'm the Executive Director of FAST, Fixing Angelenos Stuck in Traffic. And I'm here actually to give positive comments about some things that have happened in just the recent week. Frankly, today's Measure M event, there were a number of us who were there in the audience who wanted to speak and just to compliment this council on its profound leadership in getting ready for what Measure M is going to be, especially local return. Whether it's the roads and the sidewalks plans, whether it's Mobility Plan 2035, whether it's the innovations in shared use bike share, car share, and EVs. I just wanted to thank you personally, Councilmember Bonin and Councilmember Krikorian, but frankly, every single one of the electeds here and in this council chamber this morning has made a pivotal role in moving our mobility system forward. And there were many, many people in the audience who wanted to be able to say that at the mic in council chambers, and I just wanted to say that on the mic today.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes general public comment. Let's go to item number 1.
Item number 1 is a general manager, LADOT, to present a verbal report relative to the ongoing projects and programs and for recognition of outstanding employees.
Good afternoon, Transportation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come before this committee and recognize some of the outstanding performers at LADOT, as we like to do once each month. So today, I'm very pleased to recognize, please stand when I say your name, Rubina Gazarian, Transportation Planning Associate 2. They're a bit rowdy today. Rubina is the Bike Share Project Manager, and she was instrumental in the successful launch of the City of Los Angeles' first bike share program. She was responsible for the day-to-day outreach, coordination with Metro, the bike share operator, multiple consultants, LADOT engineering, parking and field operations teams, and various community stakeholder groups. In partnership with Metro, the bike share program has brought over 700 bicycles across 61 stations in downtown Los Angeles. In addition, Rubina has been a key team player for the department, providing support to multiple departmental programs, including the Active Transportation Group, mobility hubs, and car sharing. She is an asset to LADOT and an outstanding employee. Thank you, Rubina. Today, we are also very pleased to recognize members of the Special Events Division from our Parking Enforcement and Traffic Control Bureau, Lieutenant Kenneth Hill, Sergeant Diana Armijo, and Sergeant Stephen Wright. The Special Events Division has the responsibility of addressing thousands of requests for traffic control services throughout the city of Los Angeles. In 2015, the unit received 4,956 requests for traffic control services and deployed 3,661 special events. A special event can be any size and lawful public assembly where people gather for a common purpose and the need for traffic control exists. So everything from block parties to the LA Marathon. What makes this team so special is that they were able to handle a 38% increase in their workload with limited staffing. And because of their ability to measure and track their workload, the Bureau was able to add additional staff to the unit and improve the customer service provided to the communities that we serve. This group represents teamwork at its best. So thank you very much. While we're here, I want to recognize and introduce the newest special events staff, and I'm so glad they're here to see how we give props, because it's nothing but hard work ahead, guys. Sergeant Luciano Meza, Sergeant Patricia Perry, and Sergeant Andrea Wyatt. Welcome to the team. That increase since I've gotten here, that 38% increase, actually, if I look back to when I started, we've doubled the number of special events that we cover every year, and we have not increased that staff significantly. So it really is a testament to how hard they work, how organized they are, and that we keep the city moving so smoothly. We're very honored to recognize these individuals for their outstanding performance and dedication to the residents of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds, I want to thank you for using your time to do this every month. I think it's important to acknowledge the contributions of all of our city employees, and special thank you to those you're honoring today. Rubina, I know that my staff has worked with you on the bike share program, has nothing but accolades for your work, so kudos to you. And to the special events team, I only hear positive things about the special events team from the people who are holding the special events. And I know often when you're working, you may not get positive feedback from someone who's trying to go down one of the streets that gets blocked. everything from some of the events that Ms. Reynolds mentioned to presidential candidate fundraisers in my district or Mr. Koretz's district, for instance. And I know you sometimes have to be the face of the city in tough circumstances, and I just want to thank you for that. Sergeant Wright, I want to acknowledge your wife. Is Angela still here? There you are, way over there. I just want to acknowledge Angela Reddick-Wright, who's a former member of the city's Transportation Commission. Thank you for your continued service to the city. Colleagues, any questions for Ms. Reynolds? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a DOT report and resolution relative to the amendment of boundaries of temporary preferential parking district 215 in Hancock Park.
Turn this one over to Mr. Roos, since it's his district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a simple amendment, a verbal amendment to the motion. I move to change the permit renewal date of the district from 1 year from the effective date of the revised temporary preferential parking district number 215. That's all.
Okay. Without objection?
Yeah.
That then is the direction of the committee.
That was an easy one. Thank you.
Easiest presentation you've ever had to make, right, Jay? Thank you very much.
So it'll be approved as amended?
Approved as amended. And that brings us to item number 9.
Item number 9 is DOT reports in response to a Bond and Krikorian motion relative to directing the department to update the 5-year plan for the Special Parking Revenue Fund.
Okay, so Jay, this one's going to be as complicated and unpleasant as the last one was simple and pleasant. So, colleagues, this is a complex matter before us regarding how the city deals with the Special Parking Revenue Fund. For a very long time, the Special Parking Revenue Fund was a fund that was used for parking amenities. Parking lots, parking structures, and in the middle of the fiscal crisis, and I guess it was 2008, the city basically eliminated a lot of those protections, and the fund became a way to help the general fund every year during our budget cycle. And that was probably a necessary step to take then. I think it is far less necessary now, and one of the things we wanted to do is begin reversing that process so that we can begin to start spending the money in the way it was originally meant to be spent. And the Parking Reform Working Group that the mayor helped form, as we all recall, they had a number of different recommendations, and one of them was to start protecting the integrity of the Special Parking Revenue Fund and look at the definition of what eligible projects were and make it a little bit broader to take into consideration some of the things that we're trying to do in the city regarding parking and mobility. So we asked at the last time this item was before us for you guys to do a little work and come back and help us think through how we should start laying out the SPRF 5-year plan. So with that, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, council members. The Special Parking Revenue Fund is what's created for parking relatively to purchase, also at the same time to construct, to maintain and operate parking facilities. And the fund was created as a depository fund for all receipts coming from the parking meters and off-street parking facilities. So the uses is clearly defined in the ordinance. So any changes that we need to do to expand the uses would have to be a policy issue, which we need to create and be inputted or be created through an ordinance amendment, which would include the things that Councilmember Bonin have said, transit, mobility, and other things. So we will be more than glad and willing to work with council members or with the CLA and the city attorney to put into effect the different changes or the expansion of the uses of the fund as which will be for the city. So for the 5-year plan, we will not be able to do that unless we are able to get that direction of an amending motion to change the uses or the expansion of the uses of the Special Parking Revenue Fund.
Okay. Jay, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think he covered it pretty well.
Okay. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, but just to sort of preview where I think it might make sense to go is to ask the CLA and the CAO to report back with a plan for phasing out the admin code section that authorizes the city to raid the SPRF and move it into the reserve fund. That would be one. And I mean, sort of the history of this is originally it wasn't meant to be this broad a raid. It was supposed to have a sunset on it, and then the sunset disappeared, and then the money was supposed to be repaid, and we repealed that.
That's correct.
It's sort of become the SPRF gets vacuumed out, and so it's a big hit to the general fund if we stopped it altogether. So I'd like CLA and CAO to come back with a recommendation of how we can phase it out, maybe start staggering it or put benchmarks in or something like that. And the other is DOT to come back with recommendations on how to change the definition of the eligible projects that you mentioned so that we can start thinking about other things that the task force recommended, like parking demand reduction programs and projects, shared use mobility services, transit stop enhancements, bicycle parking, stuff that sort of broaden the scope a little bit.
We can certainly do that. I think it's a matter for us to have that discussion to make sure that this is probably one time to really kind of look at the eligible uses, and perhaps we can have a fuller dialogue on that issue with your staff, with the city attorney, and to see whether certain items are still within the within the legal purview.
Right.
And we can have that discussion. We can have a fuller, more expanded eligible list that we can present to the committee.
Mr. Rue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I'm a little disappointed because I was very much looking forward to this report. And this was about, 5 months ago. I don't know how long ago when the chair first introduced this motion. I mean, this was spot on. I was super excited. Potential, not new revenue stream. It's just basically reinstating what was happening and getting that report back. But based on what you just said, so you're saying that the motion that was introduced back in April wasn't clear, because I thought the motion that was introduced in April exactly asked for what you said that we need to make a modification on. And if the motion was worded incorrectly, it would have been great if you let us know in advance, then we could have easily, I would have talked to the chair and I would have gladly introduced a motion to clarify the language so you could work on everything that you just said, because I thought that's the report we were going to get back today. And so I was a little disappointed because it was very, very sparse and very general. And even more so, I remember I was so excited that day that I even, and the chair graciously allowed me to, and he accepted an amendment for 5A and 5B, which talks about possibly looking into parking citations, parking enforcement. Now, that wasn't even addressed at all in the report. So, if you could give us clarification on what language, what kind of direction we have to give you.
I think this would be a great opportunity. We can take the request to expand the eligible use of the fund. As part of that report back, we can certainly look into this issue of how we can actually perhaps use this for citation purposes. So whether it's citation or whether it's for shared mobility or for transit stop enhancements, I think this is all could be part of that report that encapsulates everything. So we can come back to you with a fuller report that we'll look at the whole gamut of potential usage.
Okay, so I
don't think the directions are not necessarily unclear. It was probably an oversight on our part, and so I think we will definitely come back with a fuller report that will address all those issues that have been outlined.
Okay. So I want to make sure there's no confusion, no
Yeah, there's no
hesitancy
confusion.
from...
We got it.
I understand there might be some legal issues or there might be some
Yeah.
issues there, but then if that's the case, then just that's where you
Sure,
report back
sure.
to us and let us know that it can't be done. These are the pitfalls,
Yeah,
good or
we're-
bad,
We have the directions very clear.
and that's
We-
the report. And
We'll come back with a much fuller report that addresses all those different issues.
Just for clarity, Council Member, one of the things that we need to clarify from our city attorney is that there was an ordinance that was created to deposit all the parking violation, which is separate from SPRF. And under that ordinance, it specifically have the uses and so on and so forth. So putting one of the things that you did mention was the possibility of putting the citation revenue into SPRF. So this ordinance would have to be repealed so that it can be added as part of the depository revenue that needs to be deposited in SPRF. This is a little bit there might be some legal high in terms of a state or anything, but again, we will have to really look into that so that there's no violation or anything, and we will seek CLA and, of course, the city attorney to be able to clear that. Again, also, Jay said it on spot about the uses of SPRF is specific in the ordinance that created it too. So all of that would have to be just incorporated in the ordinance and be able to make use and be defined properly what are the other uses of the fund.
okay, so it's clear now. I mean,
Yes.
Councilman, if I can be clear, as I understood the direction, this will be one report, CLA-CAO joint report with DOT's input on those elements. So it's one report. We hear you loud and clear. That's going to be part of it.
But, Mr. Chair, can I just say something? I know that you gave very specific instructions in terms of what the committee was asking for, and I believe Mr. Bond and you did as well. So if things are being left out of a report and we're not being clear, to have to hear that you didn't include it in the report 5 months later it's honestly disrespectful. And so if we're not being clear or you're not the right staff members for us to communicate that to, then we need to know that. Because the fact that there was very specific instruction that this committee gave and that it's not included in the report, I think it's personally insulting to me. I don't know how you two feel because it was very specific to the direction you were providing. So I don't know what else we need to do or say, but I feel like this is a complete waste of time. And I had to say that, so.
Yeah, again, I'll take full responsibility.
Well, just tell us, I mean, if,
And-
it was your instructions. I don't know.
no,
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely we will work with CLA, CAO, and the City Attorney's Office to make sure that we come back with a full report
Yeah.
to address all of your issues that was raised.
So, and I think there's a will, at least in my part, to appeal any current ordinance that exists. So we just need to know.
Yeah, it's really a policy discussion,
Right.
and
we need to know
yes.
what. Yeah, so that's what the report.
And on that, just for the sake of clarity, the way I think it would make sense for the report to be done is not to sort of commingle the issue that Mr. Rue is raising, but to sort of break it out into various sections, because if we wind up not revising the expenditures the right way for SPRF, the eligible expenditures, or if we wind up not having a change in the rules that permit or prevent a rating of the SPRF, he may not want to move the money into the SPRF. So just make sure it's bifurcated. Or
Yeah, we
broken
can
out.
definitely bifurcate it and give you some options and specific recommendations plus some options on each of the items.
Right. And so let me be even more clear, because the issue Mr. Rue raises does sort of complicate one aspect of it, because as enthusiastic as we may be in this committee about protecting the SPRF, I imagine there's going to be significant reluctance on the part of at least some members of the Budget and Finance Committee to be as protective of the SPRF because of the hit to the general fund. So I think it's important for the CAO part of this, as they examine the phasing out of the SPRF, if they think of that in two different steps, if the citation money is part of it or not. because depending on how much we're talking about of an impact on the general fund, the phasing strategies would be different and go at a different pace.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that clarification. And yes, so just to make it clear, I was just so excited when the chairman introduced that motion that I actually introduced step 2. So step 1 is the SPRF. We need to make sure that we could do everything that was outlined by the chairman in his initial motion, if that's even possible, so we can start phasing that out and making come back, which, by the way, helps your department. Right? We're trying to help you help us. And that needs to first be possible, and because I'm assuming and I'm hoping that it is possible to revert back. And when we start doing that, then I wanted to introduce, while you're doing that study, to do a concurrent study about the parking enforcement side. And whether it's part of bringing it into SPRF or creating, or if you recommend it's better to create a whole separate fund or anything else, that's fine too. This is where we're asking the experts, you guys, to work with the CAO and the CLA to figure out what would be the proper channels. So yes, it's going to be the same report, but there's 2 different steps, and the first step is the SPRF.
Ms. Martinez?
No, I just want to make sure the way I understand, there's 2 separate issues.
Yeah.
Yes,
I want to clarify that.
it really is 2 separate issues. They're linked somewhat. It's just that the biggest ask of this is how do we phase out the rating, and if we add the money that Mr. Rue was talking about, it makes that tougher. So it does need to be looked at 2 different ways.
Sure. Exactly.
So everybody understand,
Yeah.
make sure we understand.
I think that would be better because the other one is an operational and maintenance plan as compared to a policy issue, which is including the phasing out and the citation money. That would be great because it will be presented separately and we'll have a clearer presentation and be able to really stand out which one is important for the city and for this committee.
Right. I mean, phasing out one amount of money may cause significant heartburn in some quarters, and it may cause, cardiac arrest in other quarters if it's a larger amount. So,
Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank you, your staff and transportation staff, for moving this forward, although perhaps imperfectly, as was mentioned. I've been advocating for us not to raid this fund since I got here, so I would be happy if we move this forward. And I'm not encouraging us to be that incremental. I'd like to see us restore full funding to this fund as quickly as possible, just my own personal opinion. Regarding the local return pilot set for 2017, how are we doing on that? What's the status of it?
So we are looking at the potential pilot areas, and we're still trying to pin down the exact areas that we want to pilot this. And so we're still trying to finalize the locations. And so we're getting closer, but we need to have some additional discussions internally and also with the council City 11 staff to make sure that, that we're sort of on the right path. And so we're making progress. We hope to come back to you very soon with that report.
And I know one way that was discussed was starting with some bids. And just for the record, I have a couple strong bids in my district that are trying to revitalize.
Yes, we're very much aware.
Shopping areas, so I would encourage those be looked
Yes,
at.
and that's one of the challenges is that in certain areas we have strong bids, but maybe the meter revenue may not be up to par. In other areas, we may have the reverse. And so we're trying to kind of weed through, and we've gone through an exhaustive list of potential pilot locations, and we are trying to get to the finish line and trying to finalize so that we would at least have a pretty good representation of how the program could work throughout the city. So we're trying to pick off different sort of situations. And so we're almost there. We'll be coming back shortly with a full report.
And are the estimates that we're using going forward using pretty much the traditional technologies, or are we also looking at the impacts of things like Express Park and other things that are credit card use increases and all that will bring in more revenue to parking collection?
Yeah, that's all considered.
Yeah, the budget includes all of those technologies specifically because we would want to really deal parking automated for your garages. You have 2 garages so we're actually in the situation where we're going to select which, so that in the meantime, while there's the revenue control equipment is there, we have did some sort of a temporary fix so that credit card could be accepted in these garages where there's no revenue control equipment.
Very good. Thank you.
Ms. Martinez?
Yeah, do you know how much we generate annually? Does the parking citations generate annually? Do you know what the amount is?
Believe the chief would have.
150, and I know we raised citations during the recession because it goes back to the general fund. So if we were to take that away, what would be the hit? It would be $150 million? If this is a 5-year plan, when are we expect to see the details and the implementation plans for these programs? When are the details coming?
I believe that as soon as from the one who preparing the 5-year plan, as soon as we have the guidelines and the approval in the amendment of the ordinance as far as SPRF is concerned, and working with the stakeholders, we can prepare an amended 5-year plan to include the money that's coming in from citation and the uses of the citation money. Because practically at this point, the SPRF revenue are pretty much spoken for its operation and maintenance, and we're trying to get back again capital projects so that we will be able to address the issue of capital improvements, which has been on hold for the last 6-7 years. So that was the only time.
Right, so what's the timeline?
If we would have an amendment within the fiscal year, as soon as it's amended, maybe about 30, 60 days, we will come back to have an amended report to include the sources and uses of the citation parking revenue or citation revenue.
Okay. So let me just say something that may seem odd coming from the person who authored the motion and started this. This is not an easy policy to change. Because we're talking about an impact to the general fund. I want this money to stay in the SPRF. I don't want it taken by the general fund. But let's be real. There's going to be a conversation, if this committee recommends taking all the money to next year and not putting it in, where the CAO or the chair of budget and finance is going to say, well, great, where's the $20 million going to come from, or the $150 million going to come from? And the likeliest place it's going to come from, unless we identify a source, is going to be elsewhere in DOT, and that's not a good thing either. So, I mean, let's be mindful of the fact that we have to do that, and that's why it's important to have the CAO in on the recommendations of how to do a phase-out, because otherwise it'll be a nice policy statement that's going to run into a roadblock as soon as the budget starts. Having CAO as part of that is really very important. You know, our financial picture keeps getting better every year, and you know we're projected to get out of the structural deficit soon, so it should make it easier to get out of rating the SPRF. But we have to be realistic about how quickly that can happen, particularly if we add in all the citations.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add to that, and if we do stop rating the SPRF fund, we need a plan in place of how to do that, which is why I really want to commend you, Mr. Chair, for, I mean, this is, no doubt, we know how controversial this is going to be and how difficult, this is a huge policy shift, but before we could even start that discussion, we need a report, a full, robust report. Don't worry about the politics of it. I mean, just give us a full report so we can start progressing on this discussion. And I know making the SPRF, what the original motion of the SPRF is, how difficult that is. My addition of the parking enforcement piece makes it even more difficult. But that's something for that the council is going to debate that out. But before that, we need your report, which is very critical. Are you going to have a time? You're going to ask him for a timeline for it.
Yeah, Mr. Koretz first.
Yeah, obviously, this goes in contradiction to what we're all asking, but economists have generally agreed that our recovery is probably going to last another couple of years, and then probably start to have some sort of a downturn. I think we also will need to take that into account with our broader budget deliberations, because it's not just going to continue to be a recovery forever. It's been a very extended recovery, although pretty gradual, so hopefully we hope for not a dramatic response to a very gradual recovery. But we can't just assume that things are going to get better every year indefinitely. At some point, there's going to be a pullback, and we have to be ready for that as well.
So how much time do you think you need before you can get this report done, gentlemen?
I think it'll probably require at least 60 days due to all the complex issues and the added issue of the citation revenue possibly.
So why don't we shoot for 45?
I'm sorry?
Shoot for 45.
25?
45.
Oh, 45. Okay.
You should know whenever you guys ask for a certain period of time, it's going to be a little less. So we'll go for 45.
We'll work with 45 days. Thank you.
And it's both parts, right?
Yeah.
Both parts.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that's the direction of the committee. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll be holding this in committee.
Yeah.
There.
That brings us to item number 10.
Item number 10 is a CLA report relative to a response to a Bon and Buscaino motion related to city regulations, processes, and procedures relative to haul trucks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, thank you for the work you have been doing on this, herding cats and trying to get various different agencies together to come up with something thoughtful and coherent. I appreciate it. Just to sort of set the table on this one, this is a motion I put in because residents of the city of Los Angeles are getting screwed compared to residents in their neighboring cities. I thought this might have been isolated to my district, and when we had this in committee, I found out it certainly wasn't. City of Santa Monica strictly regulates idling haul trucks, and as a result, Lincoln Boulevard in my district is lined with all of the construction trucks for anything in my district, but anything in Santa Monica. I get the same thing on Pico and Olympic and some of the other streets, and it turned out when this issue came up that we heard the same thing from other council members. So Santa Monica, other cities have really good policies in effect, and our constituents not only suffer from not having similar policies here, but bearing the burden of those neighboring cities. So we asked, after a disappointing first report from the relevant agencies that essentially said, nothing we can really do, which was not the answer I wanted, we asked you to try to bring folks together and come up with something. So,
Mr. Chairman, Paul Smith, CLA. My office met with representatives of Building and Safety, BSS, LADOT. We also met with representatives of the City of Santa Monica, the traffic engineering, their police department, to try to nail down what the situation was. Like you described, there is a robust mechanism within the City of LA that regulates haul trucks. There's an equally robust, perhaps more restrictive, regulatory framework in Santa Monica. Essentially what happens in Santa Monica is you have to get a use of the public property permit, which is essentially the using of the curb lane. And those permits for that use for parking or other uses is limited to the length of the adjacent property. They also have other parking restrictions that essentially prohibit large, oversized vehicles from parking within, commercial vehicles from parking within Santa Monica. So that leaves the operators of these trucks a limited set of places where they could, one, go before the start of the work day at the work site, which could be, they have limitations as late as 9 o'clock, and some special ones where they can start at 6 o'clock. But still, those trucks have to line up somewhere. And they, like the councilman said, they park in the various places they can, on Lincoln, Sepulveda, Temescal Canyon, a huge parking outbreak there. So to get a little bit of more sense of what was happening, we had a conversation with LADOT's parking enforcement folks, and they did a 2-week investigation of what was going on. And their initial conversation with our office said, yeah, we get complaints. We get complaints all the time about trucks parking, and you know, these are huge trucks, and they really represent a quality of life and a public safety concerns. So he said, well, can you go out for a couple of weeks and tell me what's there and what's not there, and try to identify who are the carriers. And so they did it, and for the 2-week period, the first day they had 19, 20 or so trucks come in. Traffic officers went up and tried to discuss the situation with them, and some fled, some left, some stayed. They had a conversation, and one of the guys said, yeah, we'll look for other places. We need a place to park. Now, the real concern, one of the other concerns is not only do they park in legal authorized parking areas, but they also park in no stopping, no parking zones, limited safety zones, which really are a problem. The officers were trying to get compliance. They weren't going to go cite, but one truck did get cited. And the traffic officers said there's usually somebody who's a lookout. And when they see the officers coming, they radio the other ones, and they'll kind of move. So these conditions were, and the other upshot of that one was, after the first day, those guys weren't there any longer for the very fewer ones. So enforcement worked. I mean, enforcement does work, but it's a hit or miss kind of thing. So how do you resolve the question? How do you become an enforcement policy that allows you to reduce and mitigate the consequences of these trucks parking on those things? And initially I had about 4 ways of doing it, one of which is I had a discussion with Mr. Nagel about some vehicle code provisions that would allow you to say, no, you can't park here. Now, you're a big vehicle, you're more than 8 feet high, you're this, and you cannot park here during the hours of whatever you guys would like to specify, and we could post, and they could be noticed, and then we could enforce. Also, another unique little thing when we're this investigation, BSS, I think Building and Safety and LADOT have a task force which has a haul route monitoring program, which they do take complaints. You can ask them to look at your districts to see what is happening. They have investigators, they have monitors. So we would suggest that you give Department of Building and Safety these monitors. I can give you the name and numbers of these folks. Call and say, hey, look, we want you to be more vigilant in our district and see what's happening. We can also ask Building and Safety folks to, I'm not Building and Safety, I'm sorry, enforcement agencies, LADOT and others, to identify who these trucks are, find out who the companies are, have Building and Safety notify these people that you are parking in the city of LA. We have our own rules and regulations, and you need to get a permit. And fourthly, we also say, we have a 311 app that we use now for any number of different things, from wage enforcement to potholes in the street. There should be on that app, under the investigations section, one where they could report and identify haul trucks that seem to be not in keeping with the community standards, or causing problems, and having an investigation through that. Now, we've also had other conversations where we could just maybe modify our existing ordinance to say, if any haul truck operator who parks or stages his vehicles in the city of LA has to go to the city for a permit. And that would allow...
Which is what Santa Monica does, right?
No.
No?
Building and Safety, BSS, and DOT will look at that application from those, and then make a decision where's the appropriate places to park and stage. Maybe there is none. Maybe it would be denied. But we could, our office and the city attorneys could sit down and noodle on how we could modify the municipal code to provide for that action. That's another way we could approach this.
Could we do an ordinance which does a couple things? Prohibits any haul vehicle from parking or idling in the city of Los Angeles without a permit, and then have a series of penalties attached, and also prohibit any vehicle that is hauling for a project outside of the city of Los Angeles, just prohibit them, period.
I would have to talk to my colleague in the city attorney's office, but I think we could start to structure something that had those features in it. The thing is, it's the parking and the staging that we really want to regulate.
Yes.
Not the transit so much, but the parking. And I think we have the full...
Oh, yeah, I mean, someone who's hauling from Santa Monica to, I don't know, say, this isn't going to be a haul route, but say to Manhattan Beach, clearly they're going to have to go through the city of Los Angeles, and we can't prohibit that. But I don't see why they should be parking and idling in the city of Los Angeles.
In that investigation that LADOT enforcement took, part of those trucks that they were looking at actually were going to, they followed them, and they were going to projects within the city of LA. So they may have been even violating the haul route permit they already have, but we didn't know that was true or not. Mm-hmm. So there's always, you can always ask the haul route monitors to be more vigilant and to monitor these things.
Well, and that's what I think argues in favor of a permit system. Because right now, while enforcement can work, it's a game of cat and mouse. The folks who do the enforcement always have competing assignments, and so it's going to be sort of ad hoc. But if there's a permit system and there's a clear permit being displayed, it's a lot easier to get to the enforcement. And we can sort of regulate it on the projects that we give haul routes for.
Yeah, like Temescal Canyon is a perfect place to notice, though. I mean, that long drive coming down to the, I think all the way down to Pacific Coast Highway, it's a beautiful canyon, and if it's going to be every other day, every morning, 50 trucks there.
Well, and frankly, that's an area where people from all over LA County park to go to the beach, and we're essentially denying beach access to people from all over the county by allowing those vehicles to exclusively own that area. Ms. Martinez.
So, yeah, this issue is not only limited to Venice, but it's very much alive and well in Sun Valley. And because we have our neighboring municipalities who do such a fantastic job of pushing other issues onto the city of LA, and we just kind of always give up. It's not only trucks, they do the same thing with human beings. And so my question to you is, how are you going to enforce the permit how are we, because I don't disagree with you, we do need some sort of permitting process, but how are you going to enforce that piece? Do we even have the personnel to be able to take that on and to be able to enforce not only the permits, but also the parking in other parts of the city where this is an ongoing issue?
See, that's a very good question. I think we need to start, though, by having the prohibition.
A what?
And having the
Prohibition?
prohibition, having the restriction on our, to post and restrict the parking.
Well, and you have the cost of the permit and of the
And then,
fines.
and then I then think we need to identify where the offenders really are, what communities are really being impacted by these large vehicles. And then if we move into an enforcement program and we see over time that we need additional personnel, vehicles, then we've got to do a budgetary process and look and see how we can do that. But I think we start off by saying, no, you can't do it. You can't park here. And and then you find out
Sure,
what
but you don't
resources
have-
you're going to
You
need.
don't have the personnel to go ticket them because you're banning it. You can say, no, you can't park here, no, there's a sign here that says you can't do this, but you don't have the personnel to be able to go
If that's the
haul
case, then
their
we're-
big, basically ticket them and then haul it out of there. It's an endless vicious cycle. So I just want to get to something that makes sense and that is realistic, as opposed to just saying, no, you can't do this. We do that all the time. This is why
I
they
can't
come to
answer
Los
that. I
Angeles.
can't answer that budgetary question right now. I don't know what an enforcement program like that would really entail.
Well, as part of the direction, if we were going to give a direction to come up with the ordinance, I would ask that either as part of the ordinance or as a corresponding adjustment to the administrative code, whatever's required, that the proceeds from the cost of the permit and of the fines be used for the costs of enforcement.
City attorney and our office will work together.
Yeah, I'll look at Santa Monica's ordinance. I'm a little troubled by the city of Santa Monica. They would pass an ordinance where they make it impossible for any of the haul trucks to actually park when they're doing business in Santa Monica.
Well, and it's an example I used when I put this in, but I think you're going to find that this is the case for any part of the city of Los Angeles with a jurisdiction abutting it, a neighboring jurisdiction abutting it, where there's a significant amount of development or things that are on haul roads. You're going to find it in, you see it in Ms. Martinez's district, you see it in Mr. Vu's district, you see it in Mr. Koretz's district. It's anywhere where we touch other jurisdictions, because they do better than we do.
Anything that we pass, we have a coordination requires coordination with the other cities that we're notified if there's a project that's going to be near our borders so that we know in advance this activity is going to occur. It makes it much more difficult for them to come over if we're alerted to the fact that.
Well, if we start issuing tickets and fining them, the word's going to spread pretty quickly. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is obviously an important issue. In my district, it's a life and death issue. We had a couple people that were killed near my district, but in Beverly Hills by runaway trucks. We certainly at Bel Air have the problem where you have narrow streets and you have a lot of large homes being built and irresponsible contractors. So we wound up developing some sort of stopgap Bel Air specific practices. One of them, there were about 10 very large homes being built. So we required that the trucks have an ID number for which of those 10 or so homes they belong to. So we originally found about a half a mile worth of trucks illegally lined up on Stone Canyon. We said, are you going to X home where a 100,000 square foot home was being built? They said, no, that's not where we're going. So my staff and a resident sat at the back end of that pile, and when they went up, sure enough, that was them. So now they all have to have an ID. So we know exactly which property they're going to. So if they're violating it, we can bring it immediately to the attention of that property. We also have done things like limiting the number of trucks that can visit a site at one time. We've done greater enforcement of requirements to have flagmen to make sure that speeding isn't taking place. And building and safety, I think, assigned an inspector to the area, so we actually had a regular person every day or two or three visiting every site to correct the violations that were going on then.
Yeah, council member, this may be an issue for Public Works and Building and Safety, that they are probably the enforcement agency that should be actually doing this.
Well, these issues sort of cross over, so it's kind of public
Crossover, but
safety,
I don't know if
public works and DOT.
Ron, come on up.
Some of these projects have development agreements, and tentative track maps also have. In those land use documents, there's also regulation conditions relative to exactly what you said, flagmen, all sorts of things for the extraction of dirt and the hauling it, parking, staging. And so
We
land
found a
use
lot of those were routinely violated, though, so enforcement is a key.
Yeah.
And also, if too many things are going on in one place, I don't think it's really been developed yet, but there probably should be a phase-in of who can build and move stuff when. Otherwise, you just have too many projects, and there's literally no way to make them all work properly with that kind of infrastructure.
Ron Lorenzen, Assistant Director of Bureau of Street Services. And Councilman Bonin, you made a remark about perhaps requiring a permit. Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
Some type of a permit? When I started to think about this, I asked David Rivera, one of our lieutenants, if a person has a haul route permit in Santa Monica, for instance, and that haul route leaves Santa Monica, does the city of LA know? And the answer to that question is no. We don't know any more than we know. Do we notify them if a haul route from our city goes into, say, Burbank to get on the freeway and gets off in Burbank and goes somewhere else? We don't tell them either. So that said, when you were talking about staging, maybe we should meet with Santa Monica to say if they have a project that comes into our city, we have to be notified, and then we have a haul route hearing.
But, okay, guys, we're overcomplicating this.
You think? Okay,
and we're overthinking it. The issue isn't the Santa Monica haul route, because they're probably not on their haul route. Their haul route isn't going to say park south of Rose Avenue on Lincoln. It's where they are before the route starts. This is where they're idling between 5:30 and 7 in the morning.
I understand that.
So it's not that. So, I mean, that's nice. We're past that point. Right now, we're at the
Just
point.
trying to think of a solution to try to get to where we want to be.
Right now, we're at the point where every city around Los Angeles or within the boundaries of Los Angeles or touching Los Angeles does a hell of a lot better job of protecting their residents and constituents from the noise and the pollution and the extreme inconvenience and often the public safety hazard of this stuff. And we need to put something in place that deals with that. So my recommendation is that we direct city attorney to come up with an ordinance that prohibits the staging or idling of haul vehicles within the city of Los Angeles without a permit, and come up with an appropriate fee for the permit and penalties for violation of the permit, and require that the proceeds from those fines be put into an enforcement mechanism to do this.
Yeah, this is a problem everywhere, and I don't want to reiterate what everybody said, and especially hillsides when it's different types of problems when it's narrower streets. But there's one part of the initial motion, I believe, that wasn't addressed in the CLA report about the implementation of a construction overlay zone for the uniform trash bins, and I reevaluate the current fines, and so that's part. I don't know if that was addressed, but I know, Paul, we spoke on this a while back.
I have to revisit that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not adequately fleshed out when I was writing this to bring you back something. So that's another something I still have
But I know this was brought up to my attention months ago, and we had a brief discussion on it, but I think that's also something, if we could look into that, it's a separate issue than the haul routes, but then, and I think in our conversation many, many months ago, you said that, all the different irregular sized bins, those trash bins that get placed right in front of the people's homes, especially in a smaller street, it could clog up the street. It's worse than the trucks because they're there 24/7. And I think you said that other cities have a rule where they have approved vendors and all of that, right?
Actually, Portland has various overlay zones, various things, and one of which is construction materials, dumpsters, that kind of stuff.
So that's something that that would be interesting for we could further that discussion that we had. So I'm glad that's part of this motion as well. So if you,
All right, I've made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, without objection?
So that would be to receive and file the report and then go with the recommendation.
Yes, so to send to council this committee report directing city attorney to do this ordinance.
Which enforcement agency? It's not the Department of Transportation. It's Public Works that deals with these situations. You need to specify who's going to enforce. How could we write an ordinance without knowing who the agency is going to be that deals with this?
Who does other enforcements of violations on the street?
Some of them are done by the Department of Transportation. Some are done by street services.
This crosses over multi-jurisdictional boundaries inside and outside the city. Our friends from LADOT enforcement do parking enforcement. They will do enforcement where things are illegally parked, such as in no stopping, no parking zones, which these trucks do. BSS also has investigators as enforcement too. So we need to have, whatever we write, we're going to get the right people to be involved, to be the enforcing agency. And we'll work it out.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So that,
Be more specific, though, because we tend to have a problem with...
Well, I'm going to have to look at it first to determine which jurisdictions, I guess, and then if we need more clarification, we'll come back to you.
Remember,
honest to God, I feel like on this issue that there's a group think in the city. Let's complicate this as much as possible and slow it down. Our constituents are getting screwed compared to every other city. These cities have done it 10 years ago, and we're sitting here going like this. It's nuts.
We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think you bring up a good point that other cities have done this well, so perhaps in the process we should look towards cities surrounding us for some best practices as well.
Do the same thing with homeless issues, though.
It's the other way around, really.
Okay, so that's the direction of the committee. And I believe that clears our agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.